Hello, folks. This is JD Wessel back here with another edition of the Wildcat Breakdown. Folks, this will be the first one of this year for the football season. I'm joined by
Jaden Cover.
I'm Andrew Pfeiffer.
And these are two Millard West football players, and you also know them as the journalists here at Millard West. We're coming back here with another podcast. We're really hyped about it. And, let's just get right into it. What do you guys say?
I think, this is an exciting football season. We've obviously seen, a big topic that we're probably going to dive into in depth is the top four in Class A. And that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so who do we got? Number 1, Burke, right?
And I think Bellevue West jumped up to 2.
Bellevue West to 2.
Then Omaha North.
North, and then obviously us at 4, right?
Yep.
So, obviously the big game everyone's talking about right now is Bellevue West versus Millard West. I mean, we had a tough game last year against them in the state playoffs, and obviously we get a chance here for redemption. What are your expectations going into this? Andrew, I'll go to you first.
Well, I think looking back at last year, I know the seniors for sure remember that game from last year. It was very heartbreaking to end the season that way, and I think that's what we're going to look into going into this week, and it's going to be huge for our players to step up, especially against this team. I mean, both two very talented, undefeated teams. I mean, they're just going to go head-to-head and have a great game back and forth.
And, yeah, like you said, two very competitive teams. I mean, both programs are just they have such great tradition. Just year in and year out, they're the top teams, it seems like, in the state. I mean, you could put them hand in hand as one of the top two programs that we've seen. Jaden, what are your thoughts on the game?
I think one of the games that gets overlooked last year is our regular season game against them, which, you had the offensive explosion in the playoffs with over 100 combined points, but the first game was, 21-14, and it was 14-all until the last 30 seconds when Bellevue West scored. So I think it's a little too early to say it's going to be an offensive game based on the history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but no, like you said, you can't really say it would be an offensive game, but from what we've seen from both teams so far, you'd almost want to say both teams are going to drop, 100-point over-under,
Oh, definitely. It's going to be an offensive game for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, both defenses are still developing. I mean, most of Bell West's defense is made up of juniors and sophomores anyway. There's very few seniors on their defense, and I think Millard West is also struggling with developing a new defense as well. We're very offensively strong, and so is Bell West, and I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game in that situation. So.
Yeah, and, from, on paper, it looks like Bellevue West might be maybe the number 1 team right now, just on how well they've controlled their opponents. But in my book, from what I've seen, is Millard West doing quite the same, controlling their opponents, and you never really feel in doubt that we're going to be losing a ball game so far in the season. And obviously we haven't really had a big eye test yet. I mean, Lincoln Southwest, some could argue a pretty good ball club. I mean, I heard they hit hard. Guido said they were hard hitters. And obviously we've seen some big hits in that game. But, again, I think Millard West right now could be one of the top teams in the state. But obviously it's all speculation at this point. You know what? All that really matters is just the game itself.
When you look at the Lincoln Southwest game, but a week earlier when we played Millard North, obviously Millard North isn't what they were last year or especially the year before, but they're still a solid team. Look at who they start off with, Omaha North, Millard West, two teams that are in the top 4 for a reason. But Millard North came back, dropping 62 in their next game. So I think defensively, Millard North was a good game again. Good game. They were a good threat, but maybe not, offensively. They didn't challenge us much on defense because they're really young. So I think there's been tests, and, you see Lincoln Southwest, they had a good defense. That was the test for the offense. So I think it goes hand in hand on who is tested each week.
Yeah, for sure. And, talking about Millard North, not a lot of people here at Millard West were real nervous for the game. We knew our ability. We knew how to play. We knew our game plan going into that. And, just seeing Cade Elwood this week, did you guys see he had 7 touchdowns last game?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
And, I mean, that really surprised me. They totally, what I would say is changed their game plan from, only running the ball against you guys is what it looked like. I think Elwood in the game against Millard West only threw about 20 passes, if that. And, obviously having 7 touchdowns, they must have changed up the game plan, saying, listen, we just got blown out by Omaha North and Millard West the first 2 weeks. We need to change something up,
Well, and one of the big issues for them was in the game against us, they didn't have Noah Mick. Now, I'm not sure if he played last week. I'm not quite sure about that, but they rely on their option. Like, we have Brody and Gio in the backfield, and Jackson Wright, who's turned out to be a really solid fullback for us. It's a multiple threats back there. But when they run the option they do, when your fullback, who's arguably your best player, is hurt, kind of puts you behind the 8 ball.
And it really limits them. And, we really saw that in the Millard North, Millard West game. And, still a lot of speculation. Anything can really happen. And, going into the game against Bellevue West, like we said, it could be a very, offensive side game, But, on the other end, we've got players like Tyler Bandera and Grant Wilbeck stepping up and, making the calls. And, also Cade Cutler, he last year wasn't he just the backup quarterback?
Yeah, he was our backup quarterback, and this year
transitioned over to the cornerback position, and, he's really filled that hole pretty well. I mean, Millard West defense is, nothing to mess around with. And from what we've seen from Bellevue West, these guys they've held their own as well on defense.
Yeah, that's one thing. They are very, very good on the perimeter with their receivers. They have a very tall receiver gang. At least their shortest receiver's got to be at least 6 foot tall because they're very talented up front with Xavier Betts, and their quarterback's very good at passing as well, putting up over 1,000 yards in the season last year. And one thing that Millard West might struggle on this year is the new experience of our corners. Cade Elwood this is his very first year playing corner. He doesn't do a bad job. I think he does great. It's just the height comparison against him, against these tall Bell West receivers who are very good at going up for grabs on a fade route and jumping up high and getting the ball might be difficult for Cade, or Bando's going to have to lock down and play a cover receiver, which he did very well at last week against Lincoln Southwest because they had some tall receivers as well, but Bando held his own and was able to defend the ball very well, and hopefully they'll be able to do the same this week.
See, and with that, I actually kind of differ with you, Andrew. I think last week we played probably the tallest wide receiver core in the state. I mean, their go-to guy is 6'6". You match him up against Cade.
And I think he's actually committed to Nebraska.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, Nebraska.
It's multitasking clients and his score thanks to the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 he got at Best Buy. It's Infinity Screen.
But yeah, so we have Cade there, and I mean, he's a smaller guy, but if you look at it, Bellevue West's main threat, Xavier Betts, is listed at 5'10", 5'10", 170, and so he's the biggest threat for them with their receivers is they can throw a bubble that can go for a touchdown. They don't need to sling it downfield in order for it to go all the way, but they have that ability with Joe Dolanchek at quarterback, who's proven that. I mean, he's a really good pocket passer, doesn't show much from a running standpoint, but he can stand back there given the opportunity, and with their good line, a lot of times he has that opportunity.
Yeah, and for sure, and Xavier Betts, he is kind of just landed onto the scene. I believe he's only a sophomore, maybe a junior. Yeah, he is really came into the scene, and obviously having Joe Dolanchek behind, as the quarterback position really gives him a lot of different options. Last year they obviously went to Jalen Bradley a little bit more, on the running game when they figured out his strengths. But, I think this year really helps out Bellevue West, and it kind of complements Joe Dolanchek being that pocket passer that, everyone looks for. I'd say Joe Dolanchek, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the state.
I think from a passing standpoint, he is the guy. He is the number one passer in the state.
Well, one thing I heard, and I don't know if this is over exaggerated or not, but I've heard word about Xavier Betts as, quote unquote, he is one of the best Nebraska high school football players to ever enter in the state. And I mean, he's already got D1 colleges looking at him. The kid's only a sophomore. Yeah. Talent is, the sky's the limit for this kid so far.
And that was actually a quote from Mike Huffman that you're referring to is he believes that when he graduates, he could go down there with Amon Green, Johnny Rogers for just talent-wise.
And
coming out
I
of
think that just says enough right there. I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, taking a look here, just here on Max Preps, can really see that Bellevue West likes to favor the passing yards this year. 300. I think they average 328 total yards a game, and they average 137 for rushing. And with those stats right there, that's got to scare a Millard West defense. But again, you can't come into the game overhyped or scared about the opponent due to what happened last year.
And I think the one thing you'll see with Bellevue West is their first 3 opponents were, they weren't up to par. I know the Papio South score looks pretty close at the end, but they were up 42-7 at half and played their second string the entire game, or this entire second half.
Yeah.
So what Bellevue West has shown through their first 3, probably very vanilla, not much, trick plays or just different formations that they're saving for a good team. And if you look at the rest of their schedule, Millard West, and I think they have Burke as well. So these are the 2 teams they're really prepping for. And so they'll probably throw the kitchen sink at Millard West. So they're going to throw something at us that we haven't seen before. And, I mean, our defensive coordinator, Chad Young, he was talking about, he's like, yeah, they're going to get a big play on us. They're going to complete a long pass. They have athletes. That's what happens when you play teams that are stacked on offense. It's, can Millard West defense limit those big plays?
Yeah.
I was looking at their average scoring here per game. They average about 53 points per game. And it seems like most of those points come within the first half of the game. The second half, they aren't as strong as a team, where, on the other hand, Millard West is very dominant in the second half, and they fight all 4 quarters. I know this summer we have done a lot of conditioning to prepare ourselves for the fourth quarter in situations like that, where I think we'll be more dominant among Bell West, and that's one strength we have over them.
Playing devil's advocate on that, the difference, though, is I think Bellevue West, they're going into halftime up by 35-plus points, so they're putting in their second string, and they have a run clock, so no one's really seen what type of a second-half team Bellevue West is yet. We've seen that test, though, from Millard West as they've pulled away from 2 solid teams in the second half, with Millard North breaking it open in the third quarter and then pulling away against Lincoln Southwest last week. It'll be interesting seeing what Bellevue West will bring to the table when they're playing a solid team.
Yeah, and, again, we still got a couple days till game day, and we could say this, we could say that, but in the end, it's all about what happens in the game. We could tell you guys what we think's going to happen, and it could be completely different. I mean, going into Bellevue West in the playoffs last year, I was expecting another defensive battle, but then what did we get? We got how many points?
We had 42, they had 63.
Yeah, I mean, that just goes to show that, these predictions that we have, it's never guaranteed on what we'll see. This is high school football. I mean,
it's anybody's game.
Yeah, and that's the fun of it. And, just looking at the schedule here for Bellevue West, I noticed they have Burke in a potential final game of the year. Now, imagine if those are 2 of the top teams as the season ends. I mean,
and they will be.
Yeah.
The top 4 is most likely going to remain the same.
Yeah.
Burke is a very developed team as well. I know they have a lot of D1 talent going forward into this next year, and then they have a lot of young talent as well coming from their offense.
And it caught me by surprise hearing Burke is actually ranked number 1 preseason. I mean, that just caught me by surprise. But from what I've heard, this team is legit, and indicating their schedule, I would assume, being the number 1 team, that you'd be able to take care of everyone. So I mean, I guess we'll just have to see with Burke. They're a team that is just kind of on the rise, I suppose.
And they played really good against Prep, and we know Crane Prep, they aren't what they used to be. They're not world beaters anymore, but they played a solid game, and I think they were probably even, that's second week of the season, so who knows.
And I think for Prep, it's tough to blow out Prep. They'll always keep it a close game. They're just a tough team like that. And
when we saw them last year in the semifinals, it was a close halftime score.
Yeah, and, to kick it over to Millard West schedule, I mean, a lot of people have been saying, get past Bellevue West, and this regular season is ours. What do you guys think?
We are for sure gifted with our regular season. I mean, there's not a lot of hard competition right after Bell West. We got all of our hard opponents out of the way in the first 4 weeks of the game, which can be a good and bad thing because, A, you kind of want to see how your team develops at the beginning of the season. You want to see how far they can get. But also, as you're going through that mid-season, that regular season, you don't want to take your mind off of the tough competition just because we have a bunch of easy games. You have to have your mind set for the postseason and be ready for what comes in the playoffs, because that's when it matters the most.
One game I really do like on our schedule, though, is Lincoln High the week before playoffs. Now, Lincoln High, they're I wouldn't say they're a Bellevue West, but they're up there with Lincoln Southwest, Millard North. They're a quality opponent. They will give us a game, and it's going to be 4 quarters. Yep. It's not going to be run away with it like it was last year. Last year, the game we played against them, I'd call that a fluke. I don't know what happened to their defense. And their defense still is young, and they still kind of struggle at times. But if you look at what they did to Bellevue West in the playoffs, they were leading in the third quarter.
Yeah.
So I think, the first 4, and what we've kind of called is, the Millard West or Millard North, Lincoln Southwest, Papio South. We've called that like our mini playoffs in the regular season. We consider that playoff quality games. And so Millard North first round, Lincoln Southwest second round, and then we have Bellevue West. So that's kind of our mini playoffs to see where we're at. Yeah. And then you got Lincoln High at the end, and I think that's kind of a nice game just to gear you up for the playoffs, which it looks like we're headed for.
Yeah, for sure. And talking about Millard North and, their slow start to the season, they obviously picked up a win last week, or this weekend, I should say. Do you guys think they're going to pose any threat on any potential higher seeded playoff teams?
For sure.
Well, you see, when we played Millard North, they caught the injury bug a little bit. They caught 2 of their biggest D linemen, got injured and weren't able to play as well as Noah Mick, who's a big offensive key for them. And coming back into the season with their with those key strengths, they could be a whole different football team. And the chances of us seeing them in the postseason again are pretty high, just because of their dominant offense. Cato Wood putting up 7 touchdowns. They're very talented up front as well. They can get off the ball well, and I don't doubt that we'll see them again. For sure, they're a talented football team, and it's nice competition every time.
Yeah, for sure, and it's one of those rivalries that you're guaranteed some type of drama every single game.
Well, the last time Millard North started off 0-2 was 2015. I'm pretty sure. Don't write me wrong, but I'm pretty sure they started off 2015 0-2, and we all know how that ended. So I think it's tough to count out Millard North based off 2 games against 2 top 4 teams.
Yep.
And their run defense has looked pretty bad those 2 weeks. So there's no way around that. 2 500-yard games.
Yeah.
But against Papillion, defense still struggled, but they found a way to win. And getting that first win under your belt is so important as a team.
And it just boosts the confidence of everyone. And obviously, suffering a loss here at Millard West, you can see it in the hallways on the players. Coach Pete's always on them, just after a win, even. And so for any player, it's just big to pick up your first win of the season. And for Millard North again, they will be a playoff team. Will we see them? Most likely. And so let's not forget to talk about our man Brody Bell. He's been having a heck of a season this year. He had a heck of a season last year. I think 25 touchdowns, 1,307 yards rushing last year.
Yeah, and he's already like halfway there already.
For sure, yeah. And, he's having one of the most explosive seasons we've probably seen by a Millard West running back in, I can't even think of how many years. I mean,
maybe Russell back.
Yeah,
but definitely reminds you of Luke Lawman and Thomas Russell and other successful running backs in Millard West. Just the success he's putting up this season already. We're only 3 games in, and the kid's putting up numbers that some running backs can only put up in a season.
Well, I think the thing that separates Brody from other running backs we've had and just other running backs in the state is the way he sets up blocks. He's patient.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll hit the hole, and you don't notice it because all you think about him is lateral movement side to side, how quick he is and how elusive he is. But he's fast. We've seen him win foot races time and time again, and I think people just forget about that until you're trying to chase him down and you can't catch him.
Yeah, and it's no fluke that last season I think he had. I read on some article I think he had at least over 10 rushes for over 30 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean. That just goes to show he's a big player. He's he makes big plays, in clutch times. I mean, he is the difference from beating a team by 2 touchdowns, and he's that player that'll reach you to put him over by 4 or 5 touchdowns, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You just never know when he can break off those blocks and, go for a big run.
Definitely, he's a big playmaker, especially when you need him. He doesn't really crack under pressure. He's always just playing the game, and sometimes he's in his own world, and he'll have his days where he'll just go off and score like 4 or 5 touchdowns a game, which is almost incredible. I mean, if you give that kid just the smallest crease, he can hit it and just accelerate through the hole, and he's gone. Like, there have been times where he's gotten the ball on a toss play, and I've already found myself like with my hand in the air waving goodbye to him, and he'd score like 10 seconds later. And just ridiculously talented kid, and just very happy to have him on the team.
Coach Pete, because he's also our O-line coach as well as head coach, so I'm with him every day, and the thing he teaches to us is, Gio and Brody, they're both really good athletes, and they're both tough to tackle just because of their quickness. So what we're taught is find opportunities to where they're one-on-one with the safety, or they're one-on-one with the outside backer, someone that is used to being in coverage, but all of a sudden they got to try to make a play on someone that's faster than them, someone that's quicker than them, and that's someone that will beat them one-on-one. And each time, Brody beats that guy one-on-one. So we just try to find him in opportunities where the person he's going against is outmatched.
And yeah, like you said, another guy that really explodes off the ball, that's Giovanni Guido, He can break off, he can come out of the pocket, and next thing you know, he's 20 yards down the field. Yeah, I mean, Giovanni Guido, he's got the speed, quickness, anything that you could ask from. Would you really call him a pocket passer, or would you more call him a scrambling quarterback?
He's for sure a scrambling quarterback. I mean, the kid can still pass in the pocket. He's got a great arm, and when there's trouble in the pocket, he can for sure get out of there and make a play, especially like we saw last week where he was on a rollout and someone came up on the left side. He just spun right around and went the other way and completed a pass. And I mean, that's just what he's been doing all season, and it's what he's done last season. And just pure talent that came from him. Just kind of reminds you of a young Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, I was about to say that same thing. He just, he makes plays happen when there's nothing there. And I think part of the reason Brody's so good is because, you got some teams where it's like, okay, this running back's good, but they have no other threats. I mean, especially when we're out of the shotgun, you have Jackson Wright that can pound it for 7 yards. You have Gio, if he pulls the ball, he's around the edge, and his speed is close to Brody's, and his quickness might even be a little bit better than Brody's.
For sure.
So you can't just key in on one guy, and I think that's why, the triple option we run has been effective, is there's 3 solid threats.
Well, I think Gio is also complemented by his wide receiver gang. You got Hunter Schnurley and Austin Harris, both also very 2 talented young men, because Austin can go up and, you can throw the ball up and he can get up. He has hops. He can get up and grab the ball. And you also have Schnurley, who's he's a come-up player, and he stepped up for sure last season when nobody thought he would, and he's just making huge plays. And like we saw last week, he broke a tackle, and I think he got a block from Harris, but it was just this long touchdown that lasted at least it was like a 10-second play.
Those second chance plays.
Scrambling all over the field, and he eventually made it happen. We need big playmakers like those 2.
The funny thing is, Schnurley's a scout team guy. That's where he got noticed. Because what many Miller West people won't remember is he used to be our second or third string tight end his sophomore year.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And then come playoff time when he got called up to varsity during practice, they're like, okay, we'll put him at wide receiver. Kid starts burning our number 1 defense, on routes, and it's like, wait a minute, maybe he can play here.
Another thing about him is I've actually heard some athletes call him, a high school super athlete. He's got that. You wouldn't expect it from a guy like him. And I don't know if that's just because of his personality or just because, how he looks,
Yeah.
But he can dunk, and I think he's 6'3", 6'4", he can get up. He's got great hops, and, just a great athlete overall,
Because anyone that knows Schnurley,
he's a very goofy guy.
Yeah. He's just a different kid. He's hilarious, probably the funniest guy on the team.
Yeah.
Just some of his antics. I mean, there's times that our coaches will just shake their heads when he's doing something. But it's like, okay, it's Schnurley.
Yeah.
But then he gets out there on the field, and you're like,
yeah, watching him play, you'd never think that guy is the class act.
He's a very, very bubbly kid.
Yeah.
But he goes out and he proves himself on the field, which I think is even more awesome, just because he can be himself and still go out there and just dominate on the field.
No, but yeah, like we were talking about, Millard West, Bellevue West. You guys got any words on it? Any ideas?
I mean, it's so hard to give a predicted score. I like to be, go out here and say, oh, we're going to kill them, but that's not going to happen. It's not going to be one of those games, and I want to win, but it's just going to be a dogfight. And it's a good test to see where we're at. It's not a district game, so in the grand scheme of things, this game will not matter much in playoff. But it is a big test to see where Millard West is at and where Bellevue West is at.
One thing our offensive coordinator, Coach Turman, said is he would like to compare this game to the Nebraska-Oregon game because you have a very talented Oregon offense and a very talented Nebraska offense as well. And the defense stepped up when we needed them to, and the offense just couldn't make plays, unfortunately for Nebraska, having to fall short to Oregon. But they were down 1 point in the game, 42-14, I believe.
Yeah.
But Nebraska fought back and ended up making it within a one-score game. I think Millard West and Bell West here have the opportunity to have a back-and-forth game like that, and don't count out even if Bell West or Millard West ends up like by 40 or 50 points, don't count out each team yet. Like they will fight to the end, and it'll be a battle of all four quarters.
And yeah, like you said, never count out these two teams. Out of all the teams, do not count these two teams out. These are two of the most explosive offenses in the state. You're gonna see two top quarterbacks in the state, a couple top wide receivers in the state. I mean, we got a good game on our hands, and it's gonna be number 2 Bellevue West against number 4 Millard West. And I'd even go as far to say the winner might even take over that one spot.
I think that's a fair argument.
A lot of potential coming out of this game for sure. It'll definitely show who's gonna dominate the postseason for sure, and who has the skills to be ready.
Yeah.
Strap on the pads and let's go.
Wow. So, if you guys had to give a score prediction, come on.
It's going to be a game. That's all I'm going to say.
All
It's going to be a 4-quarter game.
You're a Coach Pete guy, I can tell.
I'm going to give it 35-27 Millard West.
I'm going to go 49-42 Millard West.
Really?
And, we got to go Millard West. Come on.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, folks, this was the first podcast. We tried to keep you guys entertained. We're glad to be back. This has been J.D. Wessel.
I'm Andrew Pfeiffer.
And Jaden Cover.
With the Wildcat Breakdown. We'll catch you next week, folks.